Thank you so much for this unexpected and very humbling honor, not just because of the honorees who are here, but the things that have been said. I'm a person who believes that I once was a failure. And as noted in the program, I was in the doctoral program for only 2 years before I became what my mother called a drop-off. My sense of failure is also deeply rooted in the expectations of my parents. At the age of 6, I was given the mandate that I would become a doctor and a concert pianist. I was the recipient of a lot of criticism and not praise. And when I left home at age 17 for college, I was finally able to reject the expectations of my parents when I switched from pre-med to English. My father had died the year before, so I only had my mother to lament my future as an impoverished lover of books. And I later switched to an impoverished lover of language, because in 1974, when I was a very mature 22 and married to the same guy that I'm married to today, I was accepted into Berkeley's doctoral program, and this was one of the top linguistics programs in the country. The distinguished faculty included Robin Lakoff, George Lakoff, Charles Fillmore, Carl Zimmer, John O'Holland, Dan Slobin, and I remember them well. I remember the classes well. By the way, I had longed to go to Berkeley before this. Berkeley was where there was a haven for youthful idealism, where students protested the Vietnam War, vigorously defended free speech, and supported human rights, equality, and humanitarian aid. Well, I applied and I was rejected. So you can imagine how great I felt when I was accepted into the doctoral program. I told my mother that I would fulfill her dream of becoming Dr. Amy Tan. Linguistics matched my predilections as a future novelist and memoirist. Since childhood, I have loved the shapes and textures of words, the rhymes of sentences, the way that imagery can affect what you feel and perceive as truth. At Berkeley, I could talk obsessively about language with my peers, and I was thrilled to be among brilliant people, several of them who became close, lifelong friends, among them Deborah Tannen, who is here tonight. I still feel the thrill of linguistics every time she and I get together over dinner to talk about language and discourse until the restaurant kicks us out. My time at Berkeley was short. In 1976, amazingly 50 years ago, our roommate and close friend told me he dreamed he would be strangled to death by two strangers, and that is exactly what happened a week later. Both his prophetic dream and the horror of his murder forced me to consider the meaning of my life. He had been a student at Berkeley and intended to create computerized equipment for people with disabilities, and I decided I should fulfill his calling. So I left the linguistics program and I took a job as a language development specialist for programs serving children with developmental disabilities. Over the 5 years that I worked in that field, I learned what it means to be a human. I learned what compassion feels like. Crying with grieving parents was unavoidable. I felt the anger over mirages of hope, the determination to survive, the necessity of being respected as an individual. I learned that I must ask myself uncomfortable questions about morality and to guard against blinkered pragmatics that come at the expense of individuals. Individuals, not demographics. My particular literary DNA includes my love of linguistics, as well as emotional memories of childhood trauma, the failure of parental expectations, a suicidal mother, the early deaths of my older brother and father, the murder of our roommate, the unremitting hopes of parents. I am a writer always in search of identity and place where I belong. My characters search for the same. Through stories, I transform my understanding of the past. Now, until recently, I never thought of myself as a political writer. But now I recognize the obvious. Books have far-reaching consequences, regardless of our conscious intentions. And that is because books have readers. Readers have reactions, and what they do with those reactions is of consequence. And thus, no matter what I intend, what I write may have unpredictable yet probable consequences, personal and even political. I realize now that writers are political by the virtue of the country they call home and the existing rights as individuals. I am an American writer with assumptions about inalienable rights and freedoms. I am a birthright American whose assumptions have been challenged. I was born to parents whose student visas had expired before I was born, who were threatened with letters of deportation. My birthright, along with that of millions, is now being argued before the Supreme Court. And no matter the outcome, it is a kick in the gut that people in the highest echelons of government, along with millions of their supporters, think we don't belong. In these dystopian times, who we have compassion for in our daily lives, in our work, in public discourse, and in action, reflects our politics, our humanity. It speaks to our beliefs about justice, entitlement, and equality. Much of literature concerns humanity, justice, equality, and their absence. This is why we need literature and the humanities. This is what I have learned as a student at Berkeley, as a writer, as a birthright American. Compassion is political. It is protest. It is activism. It shapes our identity as a country. Lack of compassion leaves our country misshapen, deformed. I thank you for this honor. I thank you for the collective conscience of Berkeley and its leadership, its students, its alum, its professors. What you do and say gives all of us hope. Thank you.